Hello everyone, this is Sam Ghosh and welcome to the presentation on Indian pharmaceutical industry. I have divided this presentation in 6 parts. First, I will talk about why should we talk about this industry, then some basics of this industry, then the market for this industry, that is the demand side, then production of pharmaceuticals in India, that is the supply side, then the policy structure for this industry in India, and some current trends. So let's get started. Why should we talk about this industry anyways? In a global perspective, India is the largest provider of generic medicines in the world with 20% share by volume, and also 40% of generic demand in the USA is produced in India. Now, India is also producer of 50 to 60% of global supply of vaccines. It is, if you consider all the drugs and all the medicines, India is the third in production volume and 13th by value in the world with 10% of global production volume. The reason is that the Indian cost of production is approximately 33% lower than that of USA. In the Indian context, it directly and indirectly employs 2.7 million people in high-skill areas such as R&D and manufacturing. It creates a substantial amount of trade surplus every year for India, and it has attracted $16.3 billion of foreign direct investment from April 2000 to September 2019. India is the second largest contributor of global biotech and pharmaceutical workforce, and the healthcare sector is the fastest growing sector. Now let's learn some basics of this industry. Let's start with the value chain, and broadly, it involves manufacturing of the medicine, distribution to the dispensing point, dispensing to the end users. Each component has some costs and some value additions. The manufacturing of medicine involves R&D cost, manufacturing cost, import duties and access, etc. And value additions are innovation, regulatory documentation, quality control, etc. The last part, the downstream part of the value chain, that is dispensing to the end user, the costs involved are medicine acquisition, medicine wastage, capital costs, etc. The value additions are medicine availability, pharmacist advised, patient convenience, and related services. Now, it is important to understand two major components of a drug. The first part is the active pharmaceutical ingredient or API, and the other part is the excipient. The API is the active part and the core of a medicine. It does the intended effect of the medicine. The excipient is the inert part of the medicine and helps in manufacturing of the medicine as also the consumption of the medicine. The mixture, the procedure of optimizing and compositing the mixture of component is called, this procedure is called formulation. Now, India is a major producer of formulations. Now, some concepts, it is important to understand some of the concepts that we will use later in this presentation. The first is the active pharmaceutical ingredient that I have already mentioned. As per World Health Organization, it is any substance or combination of substances used in a finished pharmaceutical product intended to furnish pharmacological activity or to otherwise have direct effect in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. The other part is the pharmaceutical excipient. According to American Pharmaceutical Review, it is an excipient has no medicinal properties. Its standard purpose is to streamline the manufacture of the drug product and ultimately facilitate physiological absorption. Now, you will always hear about the brand name version of a drug and generic version of a drug, and it's also important to understand the difference. A brand name version of the drug is the medicine containing an active ingredient which is protected by a patent, and during this patent period no other manufacturer can sell similar medicine containing the same API, that is the active ingredient. The generic version of the drug, it comes into picture after the patent period is over, and then other manufacturers can produce a similar kind of medicine, and these are called generic version. Now, the brand name version of a drug is generally much more costly, much more expensive, but less available. The generic version is much cheaper, but and also widely available. Now, why the brand name version is more expensive? Because the R&D of pharmaceutical or pharmaceutical products, it's a time-consuming and expensive process, and it generally takes more than a decade to come up with a new drug. And it is important that the manufacturer of the drug, that is the company which spends on the R&D for the drug, gets a chance to recover the R&D cost. And this is why the product patent is provided to the manufacturer for a period of generally for 20 years, and during that time no other company can produce or sell similar kind of drug. But because the pharmaceutical products have so much humanitarian part in it, and it is important that these products are also widely available. That's why after the patent period is over, the other companies can manufacture similar products which are called generic version, and for these products the cost, the price are much lower, and generally it is widely available. A specialty medication is a category of medication which deals with complex chronic conditions. These are generally typically involves high touch patient care environment. For some examples are cancer medication or HIV medication. Now let's talk about the demand side, that is the market for pharmaceutical products in worldwide and in India. So let's talk about the global market. The global pharma sales is expected to reach or exceed 1.5 trillion USD by 2023. This market is growing at 3 to 6% cumulative average growth rate. If you look at the chart here, it is apparent that the global growth for pharmaceuticals will be led by USA and pharma emerging markets, whereas in the Europe and Japan, the sales will be pretty much flat. Let's see another chart. Now, if you see the spending by therapy types, the incremental spending will be led by oncology, diabetes, and etc., and autoimmune, whereas the growth for pain, antibiotics will be pretty much flat. Now, one of the important categories for pharmaceuticals is specialty products. As mentioned before, this is expected to reach 475 to 505 billion by 2023 in developed markets, and the specialty products will constitute 50% of total medicine spending in the developed markets. Now, in the specialty products, oncology will constitute around 30% of overall spending in 2023. Oncology deals with cancer, then autoimmune, and then other immunology, HIV, etc. Now let's see the domestic market, that is the Indian domestic market. This market is expected to grow 8 to 11% and increase the global share from 1.7% to 2%. In 2018, it was a $20.4 billion market, but by 2023 it is expected to reach $30 billion. If we look into the segments for the domestic market, there are 4 major segments: the active pharmaceutical ingredients, that is the APIs, the formulations, the contract research and manufacturing services or CRAMS, and biosimilars. The active pharmaceutical ingredient or API market is expected to reach 18.8 billion by financial year 2022, but currently India imports 60% of APIs from other countries. India is the largest exporter of formulations though, with 14% of market share and 12th in terms of export value. The market is expected to reach $14.39 billion in financial year 2019. Now, the contract research and manufacturing services is a fragmented market with 1,000 players, but it is growing really fast, and it's expected to grow 25% CAGR between 2018 to 2021. The biosimilar is the emerging field, and the government plans to allocate 70 million for local players during this time for this category. Now let's talk about the export market. The export value for India in the financial year 2018-19 was 19.13 billion, out of which the major destination for Indian exports is USA, and then there are some it's constitute the 30% of total export, and then the other destinations are UK, South Africa, Russia, etc. Now, if we look into by categories, the major export for Indian pharmaceutical producers are the drug formulations and biologicals, which is around more than 70%. And then we have bulk drugs and drug intermediates and vaccines and etc. Now let's talk about the supply side, that is the production of pharmaceuticals in India. In the supply side, the Indian pharma industry annual revenue can grow to USD 130 billion by 2030 as per the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. This figure is based on a growth rate assumption of 11 to 12%. If we consider a growth rate assumption of 7 to 8%, the figure can be 80 to 90 billion dollars. In 2018, this figure was 38 billion dollars. Now, some major players in this industry are Sun Pharma, Cipla, Lupin. Sun Pharma, the gross sales was 4.1 billion in billion dollars in 2018-19, with EBITDA of 0.847 billion. This is the largest pharmaceutical company from India, with 43 manufacturing sites and 2,000 products. Cipla, the income from operations in financial year 2018-19 was 2.34 billion, EBITDA of 0.453 billion, with 46 manufacturing facilities and 1,500 products. Lupin, the net sales in the first financial year 2018-19 was 2.32 billion, around 2.32, EBITDA of 0.46 billion, and it deals with generic and branded formulations, biotechnology products, APIs and specialty, and gynecology, cardiovascular, etc. therapy areas are covered. It has manufacturing facilities across India, Japan, USA, Mexico and Brazil. Now let's talk about the policy structure. So let us start with the price control. The current regulatory framework for the price control in India is the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Policy, or NPPP 2012, which is to ensure the availability of essential medicines at reasonable prices, even while providing sufficient opportunity for innovation and competition to support the growth of the industry. The key principles are essentiality of drugs, control of formulation prices only, and market-based pricing. The Drug Price Control Order 2013 under the Essential Commodities Act 1955 gives the government power to direct any manufacturer of any pharmaceutical ingredient or bulk drugs or formulations to increase the production and sell such products to the manufacturers of formulations, and also to direct the manufacturers of formulations to sell the formulations to institutions, hospitals or any agency. This order also mentions the formulas for calculating the ceiling prices of scheduled formulations, which are mentioned. The scheduled formulations are mentioned in the first schedule of the order. For non-scheduled formulations, it is mandatory to display the maximum retail price. The price of all drugs in the first schedule are mentioned and controlled by the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, or NPPA. Let's come to the intellectual property. Intellectual property is very important for this industry because it differentiates between the brand name and the generic products. India began to allow product patents only in 2005, along with for pharmaceutical products. This was done to comply with the World Trade Organization's Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, or TRIPS. But India also added Section 3D, which prevents evergreening of patents by limiting the grant of secondary pharmaceutical patents. This was done to support the generic drug industry. Now let's talk about FDI. Up to 100% FDI is allowed through automatic route for greenfield investments and up to 74% for brownfield projects. Beyond 74% government approval is required. Also, up to 100% FDI is allowed for medical devices industry. It has attracted $16.3 billion from April 2000 to September 2019. Now, let's talk about the trade policy. 10% import duty is applicable as per Chapter 30 of the Customs Tariff Act 1975. India has created Pharmaceutical Export Promotion Council of India, which is authorized agency for promotion of pharmaceutical exports from India. Now let's talk about the health policy, the National Health Policy 2017, which aims to attain the maximum possible level of health and well-being for all at all ages through a preventive and promotive healthcare orientation in all developmental policies, and universal access to good quality healthcare services without causing financial hardship. Some of the goals are attaining life expectancy at birth of 70 by 2025, establishing regular tracking of disability adjusted life years DALY index as a measure of the burden of disease and its trends by major categories by 2022, etc. Now let's talk about some of the current trends in the industry. So let's talk about Ayushman Bharat, which is the vision for universal health coverage. This is the world's largest health insurance assurance scheme, fully financed by the government. This proposes to give rupees 5 lakhs or around 7,000 USD per family per year for secondary and tertiary care hospitalization across public and private hospitals in India. This will cover more than 100 million families and expected to increase the health insurance coverage in India from 34% to 50%. It will have a significant impact on the pharmaceutical industry in India, increasing the affordability. Next, it is mainly about the downstream side of the value chain, pharmacy value chain, the e-pharmacy. The online platforms where customers can purchase medicines without visiting a physical store. Although hybrid models are there where ordering is done online but pickup can be done from physical stores. As per Frost & Sullivan, e-pharmacy market is expected to be USD 3.66 billion by 2022, growing at 63% cumulative average growth rate. The third part is R&D investments as a percentage of sales increased from 5.3% to 8.5% for Indian pharma companies in recent years. So we can see that there are major trends. So increasing affordability, increasing access through the e-pharmacy, and increasing R&D investments. So this is Sam Ghosh. Thank you very much for watching this video. Bye bye.